Hello everyone, welcome to Hobby Models channel. I'm Valdo and this video have the double goal to give some advice to people approaching the 3D DLP printing world, also known as liquid resin printing technology, and to review this machine, which is the Creality LD-001. Before starting, because this is our first video, I would introduce to you what Hobby Model is. Hobby Model is a brand that takes care on 360 degrees of design, project, support, creation and production about hobbies, modeling and board game sector. If you want any information, you can contact us through our website. You can find a link in the description. The first subject I'd like to speak about is the reason why you could prefer a DLP printer instead of an FDM technology one, which means a heat-extruded filament. Let's say a technology does not exclude the other one. They simply are two different work applications. While we got some advantages with the FDM, such as production expense, because the filament nowadays is quite cheap, and more than this, we still have the chance of printing some big items, because we're speaking, for instance, of the Creality CR10S, which are the printers we own, we reach a printing volume on X and Y axis of 300 mm with a 500 mm height. So you can understand that there are some applications in the hobby or modeling sector, or in the cosplayer world. Some customers order us many objects. We can print the whole item without splitting it into many parts, and keeping this way big volume dimensions. The DLP printing technology is more indicated for all that area of modeling, which requires more precision and of miniatures. You can see here some 25 mm miniatures that I realized for a customer who bought a board game called Gloomhaven, quite known to board game addicted, and he's making us print all the miniature set for the game. I have to admit that the results are somehow amazing. We can reach an extraordinary detail level that you can't obtain with an FDM printer, even if I must say that we reached very high levels with that kind of technology too. Another thing to consider is the one about expenses. While for this kind of miniature the amount of PLA or ABS material, the PLA is more indicated for this type of miniature, can be something like 10 eurocents, if we won't overestimate. For the DLP printer, the story changes, because the resins are still expensive. But we will speak about resins later. I will go on now with the review of this printer, and meanwhile giving you some advices which are really generic, useful for all of 3D printers of this technology. Let's see which are the pros of the LD-001. First of all, the greatest advantage is the price. In the moment we are making this video, I think that we can buy this printer on Amazon for about 439 euros. This is a price that was unthinkable for this kind of technology just a few months ago. Now both this printer and the Anycubic Photon are about this price. Other printers are a little more professional. I'll explain later why I say professional, while I define these ones level entry, have a price that still requires great budgets. Let's take, for instance, the 1AU Duplicator 7 or the Formlabs 2, we still need some €1,000 to bring them home. Another advantage of this printer is the printing roof. While for the FDM printer we used to say printing bed, I like to call it printing roof, because the DLP printing technology simply happens upside down, from the top to the bottom. The objects are printed sticked, vacuum glued, to the printing roof, and while the roof lifts, it makes emerge the object from the vat, curing the model one level after the other. I am almost sure about the fact that this printer is the only one which adopts this kind of system regarding the printing roof. For all the other brands, the printing roof is produced in a single aluminum block, where models start directly from the metal. In this case, to avoid printing wastes, it is required a special type of liquid that can be found easily on sale. The one here is Monocure brand. It costs about 30 euros. You have to spread a thin veil of this liquid to make the object to stay firmly in place when you start printing. Otherwise, you run the risk that the model loses the grip, falling in the vat, making us fail the printing and waste many liquid resin, which has an elevated cost. In this printer, Creality made a printing roof, where the printed items starts from a surface, which material I cannot properly define. To give you an idea, it has the hardness of a crystal, but also the porous feeling of the nylon. So it's a particular mixture they created, and I have to say that this is the greatest feature of this printer. This kind of material allows an excellent adhesion of the prints that makes them hard to remove. And this is not a flaw, because with the right moves you can tear them apart very well. But it's instead a huge advantage for creating model support for our prints, and most of all to avoid failed prints, which is the #1 goal when we make prints with this kind of technology. The second advantage of this printer is a cleaning vat tool. I have to be honest and admit that I ignore if other brands include this feature. I made some researches, but I found nothing about this. Simply through the LCD touchscreen, you have a feature that brights the whole vat for 70 seconds, making all the remaining resin liquid in the vat to come cured. This way you can lift it from a corner and doing what's called the peeling of the hardened material. By doing this, the cleaning of the vat is perfect, and we won't need any more to empty, clean and refill it continuously, which is something that makes us lose a lot of time, a small amount of resin. But more than this, it shortens the FEP lifetime. What is the FEP? It's a Teflon film applied under the printing vat. If you buy this film on Amazon, you will see that by typing the name of your printer, the result will be around 15 euros. There are many thicknesses, from 0.05 to 0.15. The more the FEP is thin, the better is the printing quality, but it will also be more fragile and less durable. Reading many forums and reviews, I found that they suggest to change the FEP every 20-30 prints. You can easily understand that adding 15 euros to the cost of the resin liquid, the whole thing becomes quite expensive. Okay, I can assure you by my own experience that this is not necessary. By using some tricks such as the peeling of the vat or some other advices, like not using some tools, like the ones that comes with the printer, we make the FEP life longer. This will shorten the maintenance time and moreover the costs. Let's give a first look to the standard equipment. The first tool is this funny paper cone that they suggest to use to transfer the resin from the bottle to the vat and vice versa. Well, I think that these single-use cones are completely useless, considering that if you're like me, who work all day long with the printer, making even 10 prints per day, it's easy understandable that these single-use tools, even if very cheap, should be thrown away every time you have to do this operation. So what I suggest to you is to get a beautiful Conic strainer. You can buy it on Amazon. It's enough to keep this strainer over the bottle while emptying the vat. Being conical, the resin will strain in the lower part, and doing so, you will not lose material and all the refuses will be kept by the strainer, which you can't get by using the paper cones. So, get this tool. Very useful. The second tool of the set is the iron scraper. This is a necessary tool because with this scraper we will remove the prints from the roof. I recommend you to pay attention to the blade of the scraper because it has a burr. The flat side is the one to use on the roof. while the smoothest side is the one making the model to slip away easily. If we do the opposite, there's the chance to break the object or have a bad result. Another tool given with the printer is the plastic scraper. If you look at the video you can find on the stock USB sticker or on the official Creality YouTube channel, they suggest to use the plastic scraper to remove all the remains from the vat. Well, this is something you never have to do. Throw it away, because as I told before, our FEP is precious and we shouldn't damage it. What you have to do instead is buy a simple card deck that must be plasticized and canvas, because this type of card is the thinner and more flexible one. Keep in mind that a deck of card of this kind can be found made by Bicycle, which is one of the best brands. You can buy on Amazon for €1. There are 54 cards in a deck. You can cut in half each card, and from the smooth side, be careful, you can use the card like a paintbrush, never in the opposite direction, otherwise you will scrap our beloved FEP. And this operation will reveal us if there are some cured resin parts sticked in the bath to remove that could damage our next print. If this is the case, we throw the half card, we empty the vat into the bottle using our Conic strainer. We will activate the cleaning vat function, and helping ourselves with the card, starting from the corner, we will peel all of the hardened material off, and I can assure you that after that operation, our vat is like brand new cleaned. I grant you that with a single FEP I've been able to make 80 to 90 printings, and I'm still going on. Moreover, I found the FEPs I'm using on an ordinary Amazon shipping, not Prime, but shipping time was absolutely reasonable, 1 week to 10 days, for less than €2 each. Obviously, all of the materials I'm showing you can be found on the links I'll give you in the description, so you can easily buy them. Another thing coming with the printer are single-use latex gloves. Even those ones are useless, because every time you take them off, you reverse them. And you shouldn't touch the side that was in contact with resin. So each time you handle an object that you should remove from the printing roof, you should throw one of these gloves. What I made was buying the typical 100% latex gloves for domestic purpose. Pay attention, because you can find almost identical gloves that are not 100% latex. They are made on another material, nitrile. But it's important that you use 100% latex gloves. I'm saying this because with the continuous use of isopropyl alcohol, this kind of material never deteriorates. The next useful tool are the nippers. This will be used to cut the supports from your models. Well, let me say something very important. I recommend you to remove the supports from your print always before the UV chamber. Later I'll explain you what it is. Another tool we find in the set is the mask. This object too is completely useless. Why am I saying this? The resins we work with every day have very strong exhalations and surely have an important toxicity level too. On the bottles all of these informations are reported. When I see online reviews or YouTube videos, no one ever speaks about that. Maybe someone told of an unpleasant smell. Well, this is something you shouldn't underestimate, especially if you work with them every day. When we will speak about resins, I'll be a little more specific. But I can affirm that these types of masks given inside the box are antibacterial ones. You use them in surgery or in the hospitals to avoid infections or viral contagion. But they are completely useless in this situation. What we need for our work is what is called gas mask respirator. You can find it on Amazon or Red Tooling stores. This is one of the cheapest single-use models. But in our case, if properly stored, you can use it 10 to 15 times, because they are single-use if we are dealing with much more toxic substances. So I suggest you to get a proper disposal, because you don't have to joke with health. If you want to do things in the right way and have a lot of printers in your environment, I suggest you to buy a professional gas respirator mask, which is the one with bigger changeable filters on both sides. They are quite expensive, but later you will have to change the filters only every 2 weeks or something like that. So this is something you have to deal with and seriously consider if you want to work with this type of technology. Let's check now which tools we need to buy on our own. Very useful thing, a big paintbrush. The cheaper is the better, because it will be roughly used and it will be submerged into IPA, isopropyl alcohol, to wash away the most of uncured resin just out of the printer. To make this kind of washing, take a glass bowl with seals and clips. So the IPA inside, both at the beginning of the process, when it's clean, and even after, with all the resin washed away, it will be secured with no exhalation and it will not dry, so we can use it more times. Another machine that you have to buy is an ultrasonic washing machine like this. You can find it on Amazon store for about 50 to 60 euros. As I told you before, I'll give you the link in the description. It is used after the first washing and after the removal of the object from the roof. We will place them inside the washer, filled with IPA too, and it will wash them for 3 minutes to clean the smaller details we couldn't reach with the paintbrush. After 1 month, sometimes 2, I throw away the used IPA where I washed the rough parts of resin. So the one in the glass bowl, I transfer the lightly dirt IPA from the washing machine to the glass bowl and I put some new IPA inside the washing machine. The IPA can be found always on Amazon store in a 5 liters tank for about 35 euros. I almost emptied this tank after 3 months, so if we are very careful with washings and we don't waste too much the IPA, it lasts for a good amount of time. Another important tool for our prints is the paper towel. I give you a suggestion from the heart. Get yourself 2 different types of paper towels. The first one rough, even cheap, which is the one you'll use the most every time you clean your printing roof. To proceed with the next print, you have to do it well and dry it with the towel. So, in this case, nothing can be damaged. And we can use any kind of paper, even the cheaper one. The second type of towel should be multi-veiled and soft, possibly with no patterns. In order to have more flat surface, we will keep it apart and use it when we will have to clean the vat. So the FEP, that as I told you is a very delicate transparent sheet of Teflon, so be careful. When you clean the vat, you put some IPA inside and you let it there for a couple of minutes. Maybe helping yourself with a paintbrush, you go into the corners of the vat, trying to remove all the resin remains. You do this job a couple of times, and after that you gently dry the vat with a better quality towel. Now I'll explain all the flaws that this printer has, because it is true that its cost is amazing, but it's also true that there's a reason. The first thing you notice is the quality standard of its components and the precision of the mechanics that this printer shows. The first thing you will surely notice is this plexi L cover that unluckily, once closed, lets many space because of the poor quality plastics, both in those corners, here below, and around the hinges, which you can see from this point of view. This is a serious flaw, because it doesn't allow you to use this printer in a domestic environment. So pay attention, if you already own this printer, don't use it at home, unless you adopt some precautions. Liquid resin exhalation should be in a properly ventilated room or contained somehow. If you look at the 1-hour or Formlabs that are printers with an aluminum body, they have a different kind of full sealing cover. They cannot emit exhalations, but this is a matter even for the air and light infiltration. You know that this kind of resins harden with light, so if you let the vat with some resin inside, you run the risk you cannot use it if you let it there for some months. I resumed some prints after a month with the same liquid with no matter at all. So we'll solve this matter by sewing a cover in a thick and dark material that we will apply on the printer every time we'll do some printing. It's important that this cover has a precise length. The important thing is that it has to cover all the area with infiltrations from both directions. But it has to be short enough to let all the air intakes free. And in this case, we take advantage of the fact that we can operate on the display too. So this is a very useful tool that after 100 of prints, you can easily wash into the washing machine. And I assure you that even in domestic environment, I solved the matter. This does not exclude that when we'll take these away to operate with our prints, we'll need our latex gloves and our gas respirator mask. Another flaw of this printer emerged even with mechanic components quality. Inside the USB stick, and in the online video too, you find instructions about how to level the printing roof. The nice guy of Creality explains you that you have to lose the 4 screws to make the roof free of moving. You set the 0 level on the menu in order to make the roof lay directly on the LCD screen. So you have to remove the vat to make this alignment. After that, keeping the roof firmly with the hands upon the LCD screen, you have to tie the screws that make the printing roof free to move. This is something you absolutely don't have to do, and I can't understand how such a video could be included with the printer. Because in this way you will never get the proper leveling of the roof. You have to understand that the FEP of the bottom of the vat has its own thickness, even if minimal, and more than this, there's a ring under the vat, with many screws that keep the FEP in tension. Once tensioned it is not perfectly adherent to the screen, so the gap between the roof and the screen is even more. If we follow those instructions to calibrate the level of the roof, thing that I've done too, obviously when I began using the printer, the resulting effect on your first print is that the printing roof reaches the FEP and not the 0 level, and the Z motor pushes continuously until we turn off the printer. So it's a smart move to place a couple of paper sheets if you use a 0.15 FEP, or at least a single one if you use a 0.05 FEP to make this alignment properly. But there's something more. When I made this calibration tightening the screws, I noticed that the roof inclined itself, depending on which screw I work with. This happened because the CNC these pieces were created with is quite poor. Unfortunately, the quality is low. In addition, the printing roof was not aligned with the LCD screen. This was caused by the bad assembly of the 4 big screws that keep in place the Z tower. So what have I done? I left the 4 big screws loose and the 4 screws of the roof in order to make it free. I brought everything to the 0 level with paper sheets under. And once it was perfectly aligned, I tightened the 4 big screws of the Z tower. After that, I began to tie the 4 roof screws in a cross. I suggest to do this only a few degrees each time, and every time you walk on one of these screws, continue to move the paper sheet between the LCD screen and the printing roof. And you have to feel that the sheet slides in the same way on all the 4 directions. If you get the feeling that one of the corners holds the sheet more than the others, lose the corresponding screw and tighten a little the other ones. It's quite complicated, but unfortunately, with this printer that comes with poor CNC, is needed to reach a perfect calibration. After I did this calibration, I never touched again the alignment until I had to change the FEP, choosing a different thickness. Another flaw of the LD-001 are the screws of the FEP holding ring. Unfortunately, they come in aluminum, so after many uses they will erode. So I suggest you, after the first change of the FEP, to go to your favorite hardware store with the two kinds of screws, 4 longer on the corners and the other ones less longer, and switch all of them with iron ones. The last thing I didn't appreciate about this printer is the factory software. While on one hand I have to admit that it's one of the best slicers about support generation, even if I prefer to handmade them, it has a good algorithm. On the other hand, this software is really poor, is outdated, is for Windows only, it's an old version, and is a custom remake of the most-known free software, which is the B9 Creator. I am doing more researches in order to import all settings of this printer into the B9 Creator, which is multi-platform and even better, is updated. The last tool you have to get or build is the UV chamber, a box with a UV lamp, which will be needed to post-cure our prints, which inside the printer are only partially cured. I built myself this UV chamber. Using the box of this washing ultrasonic machine, you can use whatever you want. And I bought one of that cans used to mix paints together, worth €1 or less more. This is the result, very handful. The box had a comfortable grip too. I bought an adhesive adhesive strip that I made turn around the can, covering it, because it was transparent, with cooking aluminum foils, and I made a perfectly functioning UV chamber with a total cost of 15 to 16 euros. We'll keep our prints inside the UV chamber 1 hour long, which is more than sufficient to make them solid. Finally, I want you to consider the production expense. I don't want to analyze the design and modeling expense, etc. Maybe we'll make a video about that in the future, if we get enough comments and likes. What you have to consider at first are the wasting materials such as the FEP changing, how much IPA you need, the resin cost, the towel paper one, and the energy consumption. When this printer works, it consumes about 40 to 45 watts. To make a correct sum, we need to know the resin cost in detail. My advice is to make a prototype, evaluate its weight on a professional sling. Remember to do it before you remove the supports, because even those are material that you waste. After that, add at least 10% of the weight, because when you remove your print from the roof, part of the resin stays there, and you'll wash it, wasting it too. Once evaluated the right weight of the print, it will be easy to calculate the expense, depending on how much you pay the half or whole liter. So I'd like to speak about resins. The first resin I bought was the Monocure one. The Rapid Monocure is honestly exceptional. It performs very well, giving amazing details, and it costs about 90 euros per liter. That's why I told before that there are things to consider when passing from the FDM to DLP technology. This resin hardens well and fast. To give you an idea, I printed these minis, all of them but one, with this resin. And the exposure time I set for every layer was about 6 seconds. So the printer is very, very fast. The second resin I used was the Monoprice one, which is a quite new brand, at least for me, and it's gaining credits on Amazon right now. I tried this transparent type of resin, and I have to admit that I was pleasantly surprised by the result. The first thing to evaluate is the price. For the same amount, 1 liter, we skip from 90 euros for the Monocure to 44 euros for the Monoprice. So we are speaking about a 50% saving. I know what you're thinking about. Okay, it can perform the same way. I replied that the result is the same if not better. So greetings to the Monoprice because they created a very special product. Better than Monocure is the smell. I'm not speaking about exhalations, but properly smell, because there are exhalations with no smell. So, as shown on these labels, both brands always require the use of gas respirator mask, gloves and everything it's needed. I wanted to try the transparent resin to have a different experience. The Monocure one was white, this is transparent. I enlist you pros and cons of colored resin versus uncolored ones. First of all, you have to know that a resin without pigments is B-composed, which means it contains the resin, obviously, but also the catalyzing liquid that reacts to the UV rays to make the resin hard. That's why it's written on the bottles to shake them well. And this is the reason why this resin is more indicated for long-lasting printing processes. Colored resins are made instead of 3 components, because apart from the 2 ingredients already told, they also have the pigment that gives the resin its color. So in long printing processes, we have to be careful because the liquids could separate and lay in the vat. And we need to interrupt the printing, gently shake the resin, maybe with a playing card, to be sure to have the same result on the whole model. Well, in this case, the transparent resin, B component, comes in help. This figure is a 25mm one that I printed with this resin. I grant you that details are amazing, comparable to the Monocure ones or better. The only flaw of the transparent resin is that when you will remove the supports from the model, you will probably need a lens. Even if you have a good sight, which I have no more, it is difficult to notice the difference between a part of the model and the support, because they all are transparent. But I think this is something not so important. It becomes important in case you print models that have to be sold or given as they come out. It happened to me that for a board game were needed some white miniatures, so as I detached the white resin, I only had to cure them and they were ready to be sent. In this case it obviously can be done, because it should be primed, but this process is delicate. You need some proper resin primers to avoid them from losing grip if manipulated. So in the case of miniatures, the transparent resin is more indicated, because they have to be painted anyway, so they need a primer. Well, we reached the end of this video. I hope I gave you something interesting, and I hope to receive many likes in order to make other videos. And I remember to you that all the materials I showed will be present in the description in order to let you buy it. If you want to know some tricks, such as how to print minis for role games and board games in 25mm, or how to print on glass with FDM printer without the help of any tape or glue, or how to print with FDM again, a perfect sphere in a single piece. Whatever you want to know, just ask in the comments and I'll try my best to answer.